My name is Haj. I'm the one of the board member out here in the JETAANC, the Northern California / Nevada chapter. Been with the JET organization for on and off, but probably about 10 plus years. I am the board member who actually have not had experience going on JET. But I've been heavily involved in the community out here. I am Japanese, moved over here almost 30 years ago, and kind of managed to survive. So kind of like the other side of your experience. And Jen, you want to take it over a little bit?
Yes. All right. Thank you, everybody, for attending. My name is Jennifer Hale. I am a JET ALT from pretty far back. I was on JET from 1994 to 1996 in Osaka Prefecture. I have attended career networking seminars produced by the JET AA Northern California chapter in San Francisco. And my experience of them was very, very positive. It's one of the reasons why when Haj came to the board with the idea to produce this webinar, I was really inspired to do it because I know from personal experience how beneficial it can be to talk to other JETs about their experiences trying to find a job and also to network. Just very quickly, a little anecdote. So my first career networking seminar, mind you, this was a long time ago in the early 2000s, and it was held at a hotel in Japantown in San Francisco. I ended up meeting my future boss there. He was actually president of the JET AA chapter at the time, running the network, the seminar, and it didn't happen right away, but I ended up working for him for a few years, and it was largely because I had attended that seminar. So I know from personal experience that the JET community and the network is very, very powerful. We all come from very different backgrounds, and but we have Japan and other things having to do with Japan in common. And so I think it's a really powerful connection and a huge value add and a great opportunity for us to be able to come together virtually or otherwise and talk about our experiences, because I just think it's helpful. I also remember, as I'm sure the more recent JET alums do, how daunting it can be to go from JET back into your home country and try and enter the job market. So that's something else that I would love to hear from our other panelists about their experiences. My experience was pretty far back in 1996, but needless to say, well, I'm going to rewind a little bit. When I went, sometime during the JET program, my college advisor told me that when you start out on this trajectory of trying to find a job and starting your career, you think that it's going to be just this perfect diagonal line from an XY axis. And the truth of the matter is that it's a long, windy, uncertain road to figuring out eventually what you want to do and what you end up doing. And so just knowing that at the outset, I think was helpful for me. And sure enough, it's been very true with my own career path. So I don't want to take up all the time talking about myself. I think Haj, maybe we'll have the other panelists introduce themselves.
Sure.
What do you think? Yeah? Can we start with, let's start with Hannah. Hannah, would you mind?
Hi, I'm Hannah, and I pulled together the other two panelists. We are all on JET together in Kitakyushu, in Fukuoka, and I was there the longest for 5 years, from 2000 when I graduated college until 2000, when did I leave? 2017. Because I came back fairly recently. And I'm originally from San Francisco, California. My dad's side's from there. But then I moved to Hawaii when I was 15 because my mom's side is from there. So I kind of grew up in both places. And then I went to school on the East Coast at Smith College, which is the same college that Jennifer went to. So we had very similar life experiences.
Yeah.
Kind of bonded from that. And then I went on JET for 5 years after I graduated, and I met Erim and Julia, the other two panelists, and then I came back to Hawaii for about a year or so, less than that, and then I moved to New York. So I've been living in New York for about a year now.
Erin, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hello, my name is Erim Gulum. I was a Kitakyushu City ALT from 2016 to 2018. I'm originally from New York in Long Island. I studied history and education at Hofstra University, also on Long Island. And after I graduated, I worked for a year, and then I was accepted to the JET program. So that's me. Nice to meet you.
Very cool. Nice to meet you. And what's your situation now? Are you currently looking for work, or are you?
Right. Correct. So after I came home last summer, I had taken a leave of absence from my job. So I'm back doing that. And I was just recently accepted to a master's program at University of California, San Diego.
All right.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Julia, would you like to give some info?
Yeah, of course. I'm sorry if there's music. I think my neighbors are playing pretty loud music, if you guys can hear it.
Can barely hear it. It's okay.
Okay, great. So my name is Julia. I'm originally from San Jose in California in the Bay Area. I majored in marketing and I graduated in 2016, and right after I went on the JET program for a year in Kitakyushu, where I met Hannah and Erim. I was only there for a year, but it was really great. And then after that, I moved back home for about a few months. And then I decided to move to New York, and then I found jobs here. And I'm currently an account executive for a food festival, Asian food festival in New York.
Oh, wow.
So, very cool.
I realized I did not mention a few things. I apologize.
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go for it.
I didn't mention that I majored in history, double majored in history, and then also East Asian languages and literature with a focus on Japanese. Which is probably a reason why I went to Japan in the first place. Then also currently in New York, I am working at an educational nonprofit managing programs. But when I first moved here, I was working part-time at a bilingual school in New Jersey, kind of teaching second grade. So that's kind of how I kind of moved on from JET.
Good. And I'll just thank you, Hannah. I wanted to mention too, just as an aside, that I met Hannah in Hawaii at a global tourism conference that my fiance was attending. And at the time, Hannah you were about 3 weeks into your stay in Hawaii after leaving JET. Is that right?
Yeah. It seems so long ago now, but I definitely was still like kind of in shock.
Right, which I thought was it was poignant, and it really reminded me of where I was many years prior to that, and so when I was thinking about who I wanted to invite to this forum, I kind of thought back on some things that we had talked about at that time, because you were in the process of trying to figure out your next steps, right? Like, were you going to go to New York? Were you going to, you know, there were a couple of different avenues that you were thinking about pursuing. So that's kind of something that I would love to flesh out with each of you, kind of like, what was your process? Haj, is that okay?
Yeah,
I'm kind of making this up on the fly, but I think it's
to say, you know, at least 2 out of 3 did not have actual ties with New York prior.
Yeah.
Right? So you guys just kind of went there.
Yeah, which is
that transition is also, you know, something that I'm very curious to hear about.
Really,
right.
first.
Yeah.
So I think actually right after I graduated, I did like a college trip with my best friend, and we visited New York for about a week. And I was like, wow, this is really great. And then like 2 weeks after, I flew out to Japan for the JET program. But then I think like when I was there, I was like, man, that's a really fun time, and I could see myself living there. And I didn't want to like stay at home. And then especially after going on JET, when you have like an amazing experience, to go back home, it feels a little daunting. You know, you feel stagnant, and I think I just still wanted to pursue that and like get the ball rolling and still try new things. And I loved New York, so then I thought, why not?
As for myself, I had a lot of, going to school at Smith, I had a lot of ties to the East Coast, and actually before I graduated, I had been applying to jobs, right? So I was applying to things in New York, and then I was applying to JET, and then other things, but I didn't get the position I wanted in New York, so I ended up going on JET. So I was like, okay, well, my friends are still there. I still have always wanted to try living there, so I thought that I would try moving there. I also applied to jobs in San Francisco. I have family there too, so I was kind of between the places, and I ended up getting something in New York instead. So like life just kind of takes you in these paths that you don't ever see yourself going on. But it just happened that way.
Yeah, kind of curious to see, based on that, like, did all of you look for jobs while you were on JET, or did you start looking for a job after you came back?
The responsible thing, I think, would be doing it the few months, before you're gone. But I think during that time, you're like so stressed on like packing, saying your, writing your farewell speech, and like doing all of that, or like traveling, that you just I didn't have time. So then I came back home, and then I started like my search.
I think like being like a unicorn, like a 5-year JET, like I never saw myself staying there that long. And I think I probably should have left earlier, because the thing that was the hardest for me wasn't really like finding the jobs or like doing the resume, or, doing my resume and sending it, cover letter and all that stuff. But it was like building the network that I had lost for 5 years. That's like the hardest. So if you don't keep in contact with people, you don't keep fresh on like, especially if industries you're interested in, like that gets stagnant, and you have to relearn all of that stuff and reconnect with people. And that was the hardest, because a lot of jobs come from networking, and having to build that network again was just like it's sometimes you can only do it in person, and the city that you want to. It's hard to build that when you're so far away, and they're like that, you connect with people, they ask you what you're doing, and you say, I'm gonna be leaving Japan, and a lot of people still aren't sure where they're gonna go, whatever that they want to do. So that was hard, not having an answer, and also like not knowing who to talk to about that. So a lot of things were very ambiguous, and I felt like it was easier when I was in the city, or like in America, to actually do that networking just for myself.
Makes a lot of sense.
Erin?
Yeah, so my situation is pretty unique. I had taken a leave of absence from my job. And when I came back, I knew that I would be going back to that job, because my ultimate goal, at least for the next year or so after, was applying to grad school, because according to New York State law, graduating with a teacher's license from undergrad, I have 5 years to get a master's. So I knew that I had to get it. So I said, that's priority number one when I get home. So I could go back to the old job, which I knew quite well, and use my free time afterwards to take the GRE and apply to grad schools. I applied to 6 schools. I got into 3 of them, which I was kind of happy with. It's a sidestep for me because I've always worked in education. So I'm kind of a bad example when it comes to job hunting, because like I knew like exactly what I had to do, and it wasn't necessarily job searching. So I'm a little different that way.
Erin, what is it you're hoping to do or go into once you're finished with graduate school?
Right. So what I'll be studying it's the Masters of International Affairs. It's political science with a concentration in Japan. So Japan and Japanese. So that was exactly the program I was looking for. I knew I wanted, even since college, I knew that I wanted to pursue Japan into kind of like higher academia, because I studied abroad as a junior. So that is kind of a sidestep for me as an educator, because my whole experience is in education. But according to my license, as long as I get something under the umbrella of social studies, which is what I'm qualified to teach, I can keep my certificate. So it's kind of like a 2 birds with 1 stone deal. I can professionalize my certificate and open the door to kind of like a diplomacy job, working in an embassy. And that's something that I really wanted to do before kind of dropping anchor in a public school, which I hope will happen eventually.
Okay, so the idea is to keep your options open.
Yes.
And not necessarily limit your path to education.
Correct.
Definitely have that as an option, but you might also do foreign service.
Right. So it was JET that kind of opened that other door, working with my international colleagues, from the UK, Ireland, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and along with my Japanese colleagues, I was like, I really like this. I speak a few languages, and I wanted to use that. And I thought that if I had an opportunity to like actually do the things that I wanted to teach about, that would. So yeah, this is the path that JET has brought me to, really.
Very cool.
Yeah, thanks.
So I guess, so Erin didn't have to look for jobs.
No.
But Hannah and Julia, and this, I want to say this before, as kind of a disclaimer, because this differs on a personal level and it differs on everyone, and it's not the same situation. But how long did it actually take you two, to get a job upon your return?
Good question.
Like a full-time position, it took me about like a year. But
Okay.
also I was a 5-year unicorn. So like, I feel like that was according to, how long I was away in terms of rebuilding my network and like figuring out how to live in America again. The culture shock was like so hard for me because 5 years, and during that time, like Uber, Lyft, like Venmo, all of that had been created. And I had no experience about that. I hadn't used my debit card in like years, and I had only gone back to America 3 times, so I was like very stressed out. And I also had like family kind of tragedies happen, so I was flying back and forth between Hawaii and then San Francisco, and I was like thinking, oh, if I get a job in San Francisco, then I can help out my family and things like that. So I kind of took like a longer route because of those issues as well. So it really just took me like a full year.
Yeah, I think when I came back, I went to my old job when I was in college, and it was a serving job. So I was like waitressing, I think, and for maybe about 6 months, just so I could like save up more money for my move. But I think most of my family moved back to Asia. So I really didn't have anyone when I came back either. So I was just like, I should just go soon. So I think I just worked for 6 months serving, and then I moved to New York. I actually didn't move with the job either, which is kind of scary and really risky, as Hannah would agree. But yeah. Yeah. And then I just did a lot of like side jobs here until I found a marketing position at a tech startup. I worked there for about 8 months, and then I found my current position now. But yeah, actually, I think the CEO knew I was on Jet, and she was like, "Oh, like I love Jets. Like I remember my ALT," and like she was like Japanese, and like she was talking about it during my interview. And I was like, "Oh, that's great." So I think that really boosted my, resume, having that on there. Yeah, it was hard to get that.
Not related to job hunting, but when I would fly out to meet various admissions officers at the schools, or even through contacting email, like they would always say like, "Oh wow, you were a Jet for how long? Oh wow, that's great. We love Jets. There are a lot of Jets in our program," and like hunting for the International Affairs program. There was a few people who were there that I could speak to who were Jets in the past. There was one person at San Diego who will be my classmate actually in the fall, who worked in Fukuoka Prefecture and knew people that I knew. And it's strange how kind of this works out. So people would say like, we're happy that you're applying here. We're happy with your background, and it's good to meet you.
Yeah, just to dovetail on that, I like to say that the world is pretty small as it is, but when you're on the Jet program, it becomes a whole lot smaller.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yep. And I wasn't even on it, but I know it's small.
Yeah. We all kind of normally there are 6 degrees of separation. If you have an association with the Jet program, it's usually probably 3 average. Yeah. That's good.
Like for example, it's completely side conversation, but like my wife worked as an intern at the JETRO, the Japan External Trading Organization in San Francisco. First day she walked in and met the colleague. Turned out the colleague was the ALT from her middle school back then.
Wow.
Way back when. and stuff like that kind of happens randomly.
Randomly, yeah.
So yeah. So for before I forget, just to all the attendees who's on the call, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. But I also want to mention that you're part of JET, so you have a network that you can tap into, and you should certainly look into it and utilize it, whichever the chapters you're going back to, or whatever the things that you're trying to do. I think people on the JET in general tend to be more friendlier and more approachable than other professional, and depending on which professions, but yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
I think so. I think it's our common experience that that makes it that way. When you hear that somebody was on JET, at least for me, speaking for myself, when I hear somebody's on JET, I want to know what prefecture, what years were they there, what kinds of experiences, what overlaps, and then what things were so different. It's fascinating, and there's some common experiences that we can all relate to. It seems that maybe one of those experiences, well, when I was on JET, my JET friends and I used to say that nobody gets more internationalized. The whole premise of the JET program was to internationalize the students that we teach, right? To expose them to different cultures through learning English and through the work that the CIRs do in the offices. But really, nobody gets more internationalized than we do. because of the culture that we live in Japan, but then also the jet community itself, which is just this fascinating community, right? We're unique. So anyway,
All right, so
Hodge,
we actually have Maria who raised her hand. So
yes.
I unmuted her. So Maria, if you could, I guess, ask
Go
your
ahead
question.
with your question. Yeah.
Yeah.
She might need to unlock her microphone.
Yeah. Well, if you can't, we can't hear you, but if you want to type up your questions to the chat session, we could take that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone should be able to post.
Maria, is it Maria Reyes?
Yep.
Yep.
In the Q&A, I see her question.
Oh, my bad. There are two Q&As. Okay. All right. So.
Oh, I see it now. Yep.
Yep.
Thanks,
So,
Erin.
Yep.
so if anybody wants to read her questions, I guess first.
Yeah, sure, I'll read it.
Thanks.
Assuming I'm reading the right one. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, I work as a PA in my prefecture. I've been reached from understandably stressed jets regarding this. The 3 month prior before departing to home country is quite a critical time for jets. What are some advice do you have for jets pursuing a career in home country in that 3 month window? How about 8 months prior? I'm considering facilitating a Life After Jet workshop at our SDC.
Start with the 3 month prior.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Erin, do you want to?
Oh, for me, so 3 months prior to
leaving.
To the
Yeah.
end of your contract, I would think.
Right. For me, that's kind of like I'm the guy that that shouldn't answer this question because I had a job I could fall back into. But I think from my end, the best thing I can say is there's a lot going to be coming at you, and like even just moving is like stressful, right? So I think the sooner you start like little things like just getting rid of stuff in your house that you don't need. Like I thought I did a significant amount of progress with just getting rid of stuff. And by the time like June and July came around, I was like, that was not nearly enough. So now I have to worry about closing the apartment and talking to the BOE, and just if you can get stuff done as like early as January, even get it out of there, because you don't want to, in July, you don't want to be like running around with a chicken with its head cut off, cleaning your house when you should be dealing with like talking to your potential future employer. So I guess that's what I could say is
Fair point. Yeah.
For me, yeah, like I would be 3 months, like the last 2 months were awful. Like I don't even remember what happened. I had been there for 5 years, as I keep saying. So I accumulated like so much crap, like you don't even need all that stuff, right? So in the end I had like 10 boxes and I had to ship that. And the post office is very specific on not only on how much you can send, like in terms of weight, but also the type of box, like the dimensions of the box. So like I would say you should be collecting the boxes, and you should be Marie Kondoing your life and yeah, seriously, you should be throwing away the stuff that you don't need and selling that stuff early, like selling it like definitely 3 months or so prior. I know that at that time you don't know, who your successor is going to be, but that doesn't mean you can't sell it to other people who are staying or people who live like in your city or whatever, because like that's an easy way to make the money that will fund the boxes going to your house. So that's like, it's crazy to think how the money is going to flow that way, but you should be thinking about all of that. I think more than 3 months prior. And in terms of like thinking about your next step, I would say start building your network early, like 8 months prior. Start building your network early, being like, hey, I'm returning. Once you know you're returning, hey, I'm returning, guys. I'm thinking about doing this, you know, reaching out to family, friends, making that LinkedIn profile if you haven't already, you know, start connecting with people, getting your resume ready, you know, for those interviews and like jobs that you want to apply to. Just do all that stuff earlier, and then when you have to do all that crap with all the paperwork that you know is going to happen with your pension, you know, with like closing up your house, all the utilities, phone bill stuff, getting all that done will make it a lot easier and like less stressful for you if you plan it out. I know I didn't do it, so I'm just saying that if you plan it out, your life was not going to be as you know, hard as mine was when I came back.
Julia?
Yeah, of course. So I know Hannah was there for 5 years and I was only there for 1, but still, like, yeah, she's right. You accumulate a lot of stuff that you end up throwing out or you just leave for your successor. But yeah, I would say get prepared for moving all of that stuff. But I would say in terms of like jobs and all of that, just polish up your resume and your LinkedIn as best as you can while you're there, because once you get home, you should start sending it out, or responding to the emails that have already been sent out, if time allows for that, because I think the last few months in Japan are just like honestly so stressful, like emotionally too, just saying goodbye to all your like lovely JTEs and your students and your friends that you've made. It can be daunting, but I think just be prepared for the things that you can do. Packing everything, sending all of that home, applying for jobs, or just like polishing up your resume and stuff. And I think there are resources, at least for Fukuoka, we had a lot of seminars for leading jets that offered that. Hopefully in other prefectures they have that, but I think that was really helpful. There was like resume builders that they had during the seminars, so I think that was really helpful.
I wanted to just add something. So we've kind of been talking about how we came back to our home country, but I know that a lot of people wanted to stay in Japan, and I did have friends who ended up like moving to Tokyo or Osaka or something. And I would say for those people who want to stay, you should, if you do not want an English teaching job, you should definitely take the JLPT, because that's going to widen all the jobs that that you're able to get, simply because of your language skills.
Hannah, sorry, just a quick, I would like to make sure that everybody knows what JLPT is. They probably do, but just in case.
It's the proficiency test that people take, and N1 is the highest qualification, and it basically can go on your resume and show like it's acknowledged all around the world that you have this certain level of proficiency in Japanese. And Erim, you've actually taken it, right?
Yeah, I took it the year I was leaving. I N4.
Yeah, so it really does help. So thinking about that, if you want to stay, networking within Japan, thinking about where you're going to move and what jobs are available and what cities. I think the timeline for that is a little bit more lax than people going back to their home country, because they feel like they can, you can stay. I think it depends on when you came, but some people did stay like on a tourist visa or something and tried to get a job from there, or depends on when your residency card expires. But I felt like those people had a little bit more leeway than the people who were returning to their home country.
I just wanted to add something back to Maria, her original question. About the stress level. I think there's kind of like an expectation that when you get back to wherever you're from, you need to have like a job like seamlessly, like from like coming from JET. And I don't think that like is realistic. And it's okay to come home and kind of like not know what's going on because you've just spent like however many years outside the country and your head will be spinning. So just kind of take it easy on yourself. You're going to be jet lagged for the 2 weeks anyway. I mean, like for me on the East Coast, like it was pretty hard, but I mean, West Coast is even worse. So like, just kind of take it easy on yourself. If you get back in July and August, you know, just go slow and do the resume builders and organize yourself, and you'll eventually get back on that horse. But don't be in a rush thinking that you have to get back in a job immediately.
Yeah. I would agree. I'd like to add a little bit to that. I know that my experience goes way back to the 90s, but I can remember being stressed out in those last few months and not really knowing what path to take. I ended up going, what did I do? My jet contract ended in July. I went home for a month, and then I went back to Japan on a 3-month tourist visa. And again, just I took a really long time figuring out what my next step was, but I was pretty sure it was going to be graduate school at some point. But just to kind of like a little perspective, my transition was not seamless. I did not go straight to a job or to school. I went back for 3 months. Lived with my boyfriend at the time, who's Japanese. We were in a band together. I lived like kind of a very bohemian life for about 3 months to try and figure out like, well, do I really want to stay? Do I want to go back home? I'm not sure. Had a great time for those 3 months. And then finally decided that it was time to go back home. And then when I went back home, I stayed for a little bit with my parents, but it was a tough transition back. I can remember now just feeling kind of caught between wanting to transition out, but also missing Japan. And it's not easy. And so these are words of wisdom to just really understand that it's not an easy transition. There are no right answers, and just take time with whatever you decide to do. But let's see, anything else I wanted to add to that? So yeah, when I moved back, my family's from North Florida. So I had jet friends in Atlanta. So I stayed with a jet friend in Atlanta. She ended up helping me find a job that summer. I took the summer to apply to graduate school, and then I got into graduate school. And so it was kind of a lot of just kind of windy path towards figuring it all out. And so that, that's the way of it. But when I look back on it, I got a lot of guidance from people on the JET program and eventually figured it out.
So as I said before, I'm not a JET person. I didn't go on a JET, but from the I guess hiring side of point of view, just wanted to chip in a little bit. I know Maria mentioned the 3 months, 8 month period, especially 8 months ahead. Companies will not have any openings that's going to wait for that long.
Yep.
3 months, even 3 months, I think is a little bit cutting in a sense that if opening comes up, it wouldn't wait for you for 3 months. At least in the startup world that I'm in, I work for educational startup out here in San Francisco, and oftentimes a job kind of pops up, and then we try to fill it ASAP so that we can actually get the things done and stuff, right? So in the last 3 months of your career, of your JET careers, I don't think you should panic about finding the next move right away, just like everyone else said, because even if you could find something, I'm not sure if they're going to wait for you for your return, unfortunately, realistically.
Yeah.
I think what you could do is brush up your resume, brush up your LinkedIn profiles, but also try to build as much network possible through LinkedIn. Find anyone who's Jet, reach out to them, maybe set up a Skype call with them or something to learn a little bit more about how things go, how things went, what kind of potential openings may be out there for specific things that you're interested in. What we call as, I guess, coffee chat or informational interviews.
Yeah, informational interviews are really good. I was going to just make another point that if you're 8 months out and there's a chance for you to go back to your home country before your contract ends, you can set the stage to do some in-person informational interviews in advance. And there's something about the sense of urgency of starting the conversation like, I'm going to be in town for these days. Are you able to meet with me? And in my own experience, I found that sometimes that actually worked really well, because you're all of a sudden kind of a scarce commodity. You're only available for this amount of time, and then you have to go back to Japan. But those are good opportunities to get in front of people, and it's just like Haj is saying, they won't have opportunities right then and there necessarily, or if they do, they'll get filled quickly. But you're laying the groundwork, and even if there isn't an opportunity with that person at that particular company, they know other people, and you are also getting in front of somebody and practicing your 30-second commercial, your pitch, who you are, what you'd like to do. And, it's an iterative process. So the more practice you get, whether it's via Skype or in person, the better between now and the time your contract ends.
I can add one more thing about this. So back to the original question and like, other than not stressing, which is kind of a hard thing to do, just to not stress. I think something that you can do is kind of dot all your I's and cross all your T's there, because keep communication open with your BOE and make sure everything in Japan is kind of neatly brought to an end, because there have been jets who have issues with taxes they haven't paid, some like utilities, like there's some bill or some obscure problem that comes up, and you do not want that coming to you in your final weeks of jet, and you definitely don't want it coming to you like when you're like leaving the country, and like they're gonna stop you saying, hey, like you can't leave because you have some kind of X problem. There's like 2 jets that I know that like had some type of like this huge bundle of taxes that they didn't pay. So I was like, how did you even run into that problem? But definitely, other than cleaning your house, talk to your BOE, say, am I ready to go? Is all my paperwork ready? Is there anything I can do to make the process better? Is there anything I don't know about that I should know about? And kind of that will help your stress level kind of go down. Just like making light of the darkness that you think is in your mind is very helpful.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Another thing is about your pension. It's a lot of people that I know like were really counting on that money to come through. So the earlier you ask about it, maybe like, how early do you guys start? I think it was like 2 months. Did I say 2 or 3 months?
Oh, mine was really late to get the pension,
No,
or like
you started and were able to like apply to get the paperwork. I think I came too early. I think I went too early, and then they're like, come back in a month. And then I went with my JTE to the city hall or whatever, and then I did all the paperwork. I think it was like 1 or 2 months before, and then
yeah,
so. But the laws change there all the time, so I don't quite know. But if you ask, that will definitely get the ball rolling. And how some things like take a while, so like the earlier you ask it, they can like absorb it in their mind, and then like, oh, the next time you ask, it won't be like, oh my god, what are you talking about? So like some laying the groundwork for that, so you can get your money as soon as possible, because I know that some people are really count on that pension, especially if they don't have a job or like don't plan on having a job lined up. And maybe living at home isn't an option. So I think that is like very important for a lot of people.
I think the process that takes a long time is like being back in your home country and trying to get that pension, because that can take like a year. I think I haven't even got my second pension back, and it's been almost 2 years. So
August, and then the second one came in February of
yeah,
the year for us. So just like making sure that if you really do need that money, making sure that the first bunch is like there, because the later you do it, the later it's going to come. So just making sure about that.
Random question for my panelists. When I was on JET a long time ago, there was a system whereby you could go to the post office and send home money.
yeah.
And it was fairly low cost. I remember it was like at the time it was only like 500 yen for the form itself, and then you could send the money and it would go home. Did you guys do that? No, but you know about it.
Yes.
I did that every 3 months, really, just to like, cause like when I had to like pay my credit cards, like back in the States or whatever, I had to put money back in my bank account. So I did that like fairly often. Yeah. And it was pretty easy. Just, well, the paperwork is all in kanji, but if you can get through that, filling it out isn't that difficult.
I was bad with this. Everyone was told to do Transfer Wizard I think it's called Transfer Wizard. And I did not do that. That was just totally procrastination on my part, and it just kind of like sailed by. And eventually what I had to do was just empty my bank account and just strap the money to my chest.
Isn't that illegal though? Like you're only allowed to bring X amount of money into.
Well, no.
10K. Anything over 10K has to be declared.
Right. It was less than $10,000.
Sure, but okay. Wink, wink.
Like I went to the post office, and I went like a few times, and like I remember like talking to the one guy about it, and I was like, "Are you sure that this money is going to get there?" And he's like, "Wakaranai desu kedo." And I was just like, "Wait, you can't just tell me." And I was just like, "Okay, you know what? I'm not gonna take that."
Yeah, I can't guarantee
you don't
answer.
trust the system.
So I was like, "You know what? And I was like, "Do you think like what would you do?" And he's like, "I'd probably take it with me." And I was like, "Great, I'm gonna do that. Give me my money." So I did, and it was even worse because I was actually traveling in Japan before I went home. So I just kind of like kept it under lock and key and like never let the bag leave my side. I'm a terrible, don't be me. If you can transfer it safely by wire, definitely.
Yeah.
I didn't do either of those things. So my school, I had obviously been with them for a long time, and I got along really well with the office staff. And what I did was I kept the money in the account, and she just sent it to me with the pension, because the pension will went to my Fukuoka bank.
Right.
So it just all deposited there for at least the August bunch.
Right.
And then I gave her, that was kind of like a trial though, because while I was in Hawaii, I had to do all the paperwork to have them send all that money into my account. So that was nice of them, and that's not always the case. People like don't trust them and stuff, but I like trusted them, and I had built a great relationship with them. So I knew that, they would get the money with my pension all in like that nice, like fat, like transfer. So that was really great, because I didn't like lose as much on the fees by sending it like all the time. I only had it sent twice. So it wasn't as like, the fees weren't as expensive.
Smart. Yeah, really good. Yeah, it's good that we're talking about this, because these are the things that you need to start thinking about at least 3 months out. The logistics that that's the daunting bit. I think another takeaway here is don't procrastinate. And it's easier said than done. I can speak from experience. I don't even want to tell you what my experience was with my pension. I'm not gonna share it, but suffice it to say that I procrastinated and literally paid for it. So don't procrastinate. Don't be like me. Don't strap your money to your chest if you can avoid it.
So
That's
great.
hilarious. Yeah, go ahead, Haj.
Yeah, sorry, we have another question.
Okay.
That came in a Q&A. And I'm hoping that we're gonna run out of, we said 6 to 7 p.m. in Western time, and it's almost a minute to go. I'm hoping that this Zoom doesn't disappear because I think this conversation is going to go on for a little bit longer.
Yeah, Hannah, this is for you. This
yeah.
I'm going to be a 5th year Jet. Okay, I know, and I dread that networking process. Any hard tips to rebuild on that network? How did you reopen that dialogue? What meetings did you use, etc.? So I'll just answer that one kind of quickly. So basically, I didn't do this early enough, which is like why I struggled so much. Basically, I hope that you do have a LinkedIn. So you make your LinkedIn profile and you start building on those connections in terms of like narrowing down what you want to do, like in terms of your industry, and trying to connect with people who are on JET, perhaps who work in those industries, or also that city you're going to be in. So you can connect with people through the chapter, basically what we're doing now, right? And the people who are working there, so you can start networking and getting informational interviews with the people in the city that you want to live in. Doing either of those things. And people are generally very friendly. You know, LinkedIn is basically built for you to have those chats and connect with those people. So I know it's hard when you've been away for like 5 years and you're just like, I don't know how to, network, because Japanese networking is quite different. But don't be afraid to send that first message and reach out, because it's very normal in America to do that these days, and it's not at all weird, and people are very used to getting messages like that, and people are flattered. So I hope that answered part of that question. And I think there was another one.
Yes, everyone. So it sounds like networking is most key. Any more networking tips you would like to add? There are many fresh grads who know of LinkedIn, set one up, but don't know how to truly utilize it. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I can tell you really quickly that that there's the free LinkedIn and there's the premium LinkedIn. So just really quickly, having been on JET in the 90s, I've got a fairly long work history, but actually I took about a 10-year break to raise kids. And just recently, well, I'll be celebrating my 1-year anniversary at my current job in a month. So I've recently been in the job market. And when I came out of that 10-year hiatus, I actually invested in the premium LinkedIn. It's $50 or $60 a month. And what that allowed me to do was directly message people that I wasn't connected to. So in theory, I could look up all kinds of different criteria of people who are on LinkedIn. And even if I hadn't met them before, I could message them directly. For me, that was worth the investment. I actually got in touch with a woman who was doing cross-cultural communication work, and her specialization was Japan. And so that put me in touch with her. There were all sorts of great connections that I made that I wouldn't have been able to make had I not invested the $60 a month in the LinkedIn Premium. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Sorry, I just
You
wanted to
also
add.
get a, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Julia.
Oh, I was going to say, you get a 30-day free trial if it's your first
That's true.
time.
You get a 30-day
Which
free
I
trial.
milked that so hard. So if you
Nice.
don't want to pay the 60, just do it as much as you can within 30 days.
Sorry, I just wanted to
Sure.
add, like, I got rid of my Facebook because while I was away, because I was just like, I hate this. But I had to actually join again because a lot of networking I did do was on Facebook. Like, there's a Facebook group called, like, I gotta look at it now. There's a Facebook group that is on Facebook that's like AJET jobs or something. And it's a private group, but they post job postings like fairly like frequently, jobs within America, and then also jobs in Japan. And I notice a lot of people are very active posting those types of jobs. So if you are on Facebook, search for groups like that, join the chapter that, you know, you're of the city you're going to be living in. And also I was looking on JetWit a lot for job postings like that as well. So just knowing those like kind of groups or, you know, forums where people are posting that stuff so you can network and get the most like preferable job opportunities.
Would you guys say that most Jets in Japan know about JetWit?
I actually I haven't heard about it.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my next question, because a lot's happened in the way of technology, and I wonder now how within Japan Jets are able to share information, and because it was my assumption that JetWit, it's JETWIT, it's a what is it, Hannah? It's like a it's basically a mailing list. There's one person, Ryan Hata, who sends out job postings to a long emailing list, and it's called JetWit. I assumed that most Jets within Japan knew about it, and so clearly that's not necessarily the case, but maybe Hodge, what we can do is kind of put our heads together and you know, any kind of forums or Facebook pages or anything that we can think of, maybe we can put it on the JETAANC Facebook page or Summer Central, so that we can start sharing this information and helping the kind of spread the word on the resources out there.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea.
It's jetwit.com, and then the group that I'm in is called AJet Job Listings. So if you go on Facebook and type that in, you just write, in order to join and be approved, you just write what years you're on in Jet and where you are at, and they post it like very frequently. So I think that's like a really good place for jobs within Japan and then like outside back in America. So
Is it across the country? Like
yeah, it's across it's just in the US and then in Japan, so across those two countries, and it's very frequent. People post it, and they can ask questions and things like that. So it's a good, I think I recently discovered it, which is kind of sad because it would have been nice to know before, but yeah, definitely. And then if your college alumni pages, etc., are really important, because the job I got now is because an alumni reached out on one of the pages and one of the groups that I joined, and then I contacted her, and then I got the position because of that. I wouldn't have known otherwise about that position if I, was randomly searching. So that's really important to be active on social media, even if you don't really like it.
Mm-hmm.
I think a couple tips on the LinkedIn. It's definitely good to connect to people that you know, but sometimes it's 2 degrees of separations that really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see people who are connected to somebody with the person that you know, definitely ask for intro. Do not hesitate. Just simply ask for intro with maybe quick pitch on what you're looking for and such, and then schedule an informational interview or something like that. Likewise, definitely widen your LinkedIn network by adding more people to the network. But do make sure you introduce yourself, who you are or how you're connected or whatever, instead of just sending the blank invitation.
Hi, I'd like to add you to my network on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a blank email and I have no idea who you are.
If I don't know you, I will probably not.
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant on adding random people, but yeah, if they like write a nice message, then maybe.
Yeah, if you're just nice and friendly, people are not going to be like, absolutely not. Like, that's I've never heard of someone doing that.
So,
Yeah, everybody has their, bless you, everybody has their own. For me personally, I don't add anybody that I haven't met.
mhm.
Even if they write me a note, that third person, that connection, that referral, like Hodge is talking about, is really, really important. If Hodge says, Jennifer, this person is interested in connecting with you because of this, then yes, I'm going to connect, you know, but otherwise I don't add people I don't know.
Same. You get so many requests, like 5 a day. You're not going to accept all of them, you know.
Yep, for sure.
I
But-
add people.
But yeah,
Well, that's the thing, everybody's different.
I feel like on like social media, I'm very like private. I don't accept anybody, but on LinkedIn, I'm like, okay, whatever, because this could lead to like
mhm.
some other job opportunity that I want. So like,
That's
I'm
true.
thinking if I add them, what, not only like they want something from me, but you know, I could get something from them too. So
Mhm.
that's how I approach LinkedIn a little bit more like, you know, liberally than my social media.
Makes sense.
So yeah, I do these kind of career conversations with Japanese exchange students who are coming to the state, and especially San Francisco area as well. And I do offer this to say, hey, if anybody wants to add me to LinkedIn, do feel free to do so. And definitely make sure that you're part of the webinar and a memo so that I know who you are.
Yeah, same for me.
Yeah, definitely. When I say this, and no matter how big the group is, I never get the requests. So, so we'll see. But the offer is out there if anybody wants to take advantage of random networks that you're generating with this. Yeah.
I do want to add something else. Sorry, I feel like I'm
Go
talking.
ahead.
But
No.
I was really into Japan and Japanese, and I thought that I was going to do that, you know, stay in Japan forever, or like, you know, become a, you know, professor in Japanese history or something. But I didn't end up doing that, and it's okay to not continue that. Like, I know a lot of people are like, I lived there for so long, I should be fluent, I need to be working in this field because, you know, it's kind of a waste. But it's really not at all. It's just part of like the longer journey you've had, because not everybody who, you know, studies abroad in this country is going to end up like having something to do with it afterwards. So don't feel pressured to go into that field afterwards. You know, be open to so many different things, because you don't know where it's going to lead you, and you're going to have a long career, and you should just try other things, you know, because your career is going to be long, and, you know, don't just get stuck in one thing.
For sure.
Are there any other questions from the participants? I don't really see.
No, I don't see any other hands raised over here.
Is there anything now that we're talking about this that they want to bring forward?
Oh,
Oh, wait. Yeah, there's one.
Erin.
Oh, hey.
Oh, hey. hello.
Okay.
Two.
Okay.
Hey, so we get two questions that just popped up.
Yeah. So may we have maybe contact you if we have questions later. How can we do that? I'm open to helping any way I can. I'd love to help out.
Yeah, I can provide my email and LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Open to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, contact information.
Hodge,
Yeah.
how should we coordinate this? What are your thoughts?
Probably, well, I could just simply, easiest thing probably is just use my email address, because everyone can easily remember. Hajime@gmail.com.
Should I type it in the, or do you
Yeah,
want
let's type it in there as
Oh,
well.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very simple. Yeah, hajime@gmail.com. Then I could, forward you or do whatever we need to do. So
Yeah, actually, I'll go ahead and type my email address too.
all right.
Is that
So
in the chat? Is that where?
Oh, I think.
all participants.
Oh, did I
No
close it
present
after I answered?
Julia.
Oh, I should have written everyone's email down.
Where do I?
It's all good. It's all good. So the Q&A, once it flips over from open to answered, and then you
Yeah.
just need to go to the top to the little window and
Oh, then
and
just
click on
type
answered.
answer.
Yeah, and then you can see the string. So panelists, it looks like everybody is able to type in email addresses, and it will be seen in that Q&A
Yeah.
string.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yay.
All right, so I will just type the answer here. And I think, yeah, so I'll just type in mine here as well.
Okay, I guess I should just type it in here. Are there any other questions that you, or like topics that you want us to address? I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Yeah, I don't think, there's always something that you forget about, afterwards.
Yeah.
And there's always more to talk about, which is why we plan on doing more of these in the future.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll just give it one more minute in case any of our attendees have questions.
Yeah.
If not related, I'm looking over the questions here.
Yeah, me too.
But not related to kind of like specifically career, but I am like big into like writing and like reading, and historians do that. And record if you can. I don't know if anyone actually writes anymore, but or blogs, whatever. Record kind of like this transition, because this is like a really interesting part of your life coming from JET, because it might not seem like a big deal now, like especially if you've been there for like 3+ years, I think is like kind of like a long time. So like now you're like, oh, ho hum JET, and you're very stressed and you don't think it's a big deal, but it is a big deal. The first person who was a big deal that talked to me about JET was the admissions director at American University in Washington, D.C. And he said, I'm so happy to have a JET in the application pool. And I was like, what do you like, JET, me special? Come on. So like your transition from Japan to here is like a huge thing. So maybe like write some interesting things down that you're seeing, keep in contact with friends that you've made. So yeah, I guess that's my advice. Chronicle what you're doing.
Sorry, I forgot something else that I did want to talk about in terms of the job hunting process. So if you've been there a while, like over a year or so, and you hadn't really worked anywhere prior, like very, full time before going to Japan, jobs are going to ask you for some references or, recommendations. And it's obviously hard if the only like job really you have with someone who you trust will give you a good reference is in Japan. So I think it's really important to find those key people before you leave, to cultivate a good relationship with them, and then also make sure that they know that you're going to be job hunting, and if they, if you email them, they can like write a good reference or whatever, because I had to go back and I had to ask certain teachers, and luckily I had a good relationship with them where they could write me a recommendation or whatnot, or reference. This could also apply to grad school or whatever. But it's important to think about on the other side as well, like keeping that network active as well. So think about that when you're going back, and when jobs are going to ask you about references and such.
Something to add there real quick. I'm sorry, go ahead, Julia.
No, I think just also from your JTEs, you can also ask other JETs as well as resources for references, because it would look great. Assuming if they're in the same country, then, you can give them their number for reference, or if it's international, you can give them email. But I think looking at yours as well, that's a good resource and good network as well.
For sure. Just to add to that, if you're 3 months out, one thing you can do is go ahead. If you have a good relationship with your teachers or with other colleagues in Japan, there's nothing wrong with drafting your own reference it saves a lot of time. And in some cases, the people you're asking for references from really appreciate it, and they'll probably just sign off on what you write. And then that way you have, you're able to include things that might not have made it into the original reference. You've got a little bit of control there. And again, I think it's appreciated.
Yeah, that happened to me. I'd never heard of that before. So like when my JTE said like, oh, you can do that, I was like, you can? Like I didn't know that you could do that. But so for references, I had a great relationship with all my, I had 7 in my high school that I worked at.
Nice.
I had a great relationship with them. But when it came to references, they were like, you know, we don't know who this is to. Do you know what you're doing? And like, that's where like my anxiety came. I was like, no, I don't know what I'm doing. But what you can do is give them, if you don't want to draft your own, give them a template to kind of like, if they don't know how to write one, or if they don't know what you're looking for, like maybe like write some prompts for them. If you're going to definitely go into grad school or definitely go into a job, like maybe make 2 different types of prompts for them so they know what they're doing. If you just say like, please write a reference, they're going to be like, you know, I'm pretty busy and you're just telling me to like write this out. Like that's kind of like, it's going to end up being like worse for you than anything. I had their references came back and like, I didn't give them such great prompts. I didn't want to like write my own, because again, I didn't really know that that was a thing you could do. But
Oh yeah, it's a thing you can do.
Not the greatest worded reference letter, and I could have been better. So definitely prompts, and if you know what you're doing, that definitely helps.
I feel like it's really hard to sell if the position as an ALT to, you know, depending on your industry, but just note that your skills are transferable. So people might be like, oh, you just taught English in Japan, blah, blah, blah. But just write down while you're still there all the things that you did do. And then think about how those skills will be transferable, because actually you have survived in a foreign country for X amount of time, working with the government for that government for X amount of time. And I think that people forget how much how difficult that is, and how many different skills that you need to be able to survive in that kind of environment. So just don't feel like, oh, I just did this. And, you know, people always kind of stereotype this kind of position, but just have pride in yourself that these skills are transferable, and project yourself as thus, fake it till you make it, whatever.
Yeah, I think that really applied to me when I first left JET, because unlike Hannah and Erim, who studied Japanese, knew the language, you know, really well, I did not have that background at all. I came into it not knowing any Japanese.
She got stopped.
Oh no,
Julia.
Okay, she'll come back in a second. Okay.
I knew where she was going with it, but I don't want to just like, assume that I know. So.
Yeah, it's fine. So I guess basically what she was trying to say is that she didn't come from like a background in, you know, in not having Japanese language behind her. So she, you know, felt like she had to explain maybe. Okay, I was just paraphrasing what I thought you were gonna say, but just continue.
I totally just cut out. Okay. Whoops.
You cut off after you said, you know, you didn't know any Japanese, and that was it.
Oh, sorry. I think I was rambling on. But yeah, I think for me, it was really hard after that, because I went right after college. So like I had this plan, but then after JET, it was right back to like graduating again, where I didn't know what I was doing. But then, yeah, afterwards, you know, filling out my resume, I was just like, wow, I think I learned a lot from this experience. Maybe it's not like the Japanese, but I think it's the job itself and the skills, you know. the planning, the organizing, working with a bunch of different other JTEs where the language barrier was really difficult, or you had to just work with so many people, that I think all those skills are very transferable to any position that you're looking for.
Absolutely. Really transferable skills. There's as Hannah said, the coping skills that go into adapting to a different culture. There are interpersonal skills where you're dealing with a lot of different personalities, and then also a lot of different organizations and institutions. And then also the presentation skills when you are getting up in front of 40 kids 10 times a week and teaching. There are the skills that go into putting together those lesson plans. So, you want to think about organizational skills, interpersonal skills, analytical skills, and think about it. Think about those things in more general terms and speak to those, because those are communication skills. Those are going to be the things that employers are interested in. They're going to be looking for fit you into their organizational culture, and we are versatile as JETs. We have to be. We were interviewed for that. We were vetted for that before we went on JET. So we come, as valuable employees already, having been through this program.
Are all of the, are they called attendees? Are all of the attendees? Are they, oh no, yes, attendees, sorry. Are they all returning to the States, or are they staying, or some staying in Japan? Do we know?
So we have.
That's a good question.
All right, Maria, can you talk, or?
I just want to make a nice STC for people leaving JET. I'm a 5th year. Well, I'm going to be a 5th year.
All right.
Are you returning home, or are you staying in Japan after JET?
I am planning to return home, so this is very, very prevalent to me too.
Yeah, great.
Where are you from?
Washington, so I guess I'm above you guys.
Okay.
What kind of
for some of us that means DC.
I'm Washington State. Washington State. Cool.
Yeah. All right.
What kind of industry are you thinking of going back into?
So I used to work for education and community college. I was a test administrator for international students.
Mm.
Yeah,
but I want to go back as international advisor and international exchange education. But mostly it was like the sector of like incoming Japanese students who are coming to America to study abroad, and I helped them like transition to that college / homestay.
Oh, wow. So that's very applicable to JET.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I thought I wanted to do something like that as well. But I ended up I'm not working with any Japanese students right now, and my Japanese is currently not so great right now because I haven't practiced in ages. But I am still working in education. I just realized what was more important to me, because I was working at a bilingual school and I was working with Japanese students. But I thought, do I want to continue like going towards the more Japanese route, or do I really love just working with students more? And I just realized that they don't have to be Japanese students. And I'm working with students all over New York. So it was like definitely taken me to a different path, but that definitely sounds like you know what you want to do. And I hope that leads you to, wherever you want to go in your career.
Oh, correction. Actually, that was my previous job before. Now, I want to go definitely actually your route. It's like, oh, it doesn't have to be just Japanese students. International students would be great. I mean, in the JET program, there are so many people from other different countries, students too. So I enjoyed the whole broader aspect as well. Yes, Japanese ability is great, but I'm also really willing for the international more global route. So yay.
And this is back in Washington. You're gonna.
I'm going back in Washington State.
Nice.
Oh, I think one person has a question. I think. Oh wait, no. Someone said that they returned to the U.S. 3 months ago after post-jet teaching translation career in Japan. I'm from the Northwest as well. Okay. So
I don't think there's any questions. Just.
All right, somebody said "Otsukaresama deshita," so everybody just smile and say "Otsukaresama."
Okay. Alberto also raised his hand as well.
Oh,
Oh, really? Someone
Yeah,
else?
so just wanted to see if you're
Any Q&A?
Last one. Nobody.
you hear us?
Wait, can you guys hear me? Or-
Yep.
Yeah, there you are. Yes, hi.
Hi. I just had one question about transitioning back. You guys mentioned reverse culture shocks. So I was wondering, how did you guys cope with that? Because that's one thing I'm a bit worried about when I do go back to the States eventually. Like, are you guys still processing that, or is that?
yeah, to some extent. Lots of deep breathing, you know. But yeah, like I feel like New York is like the exact opposite of Japan, especially in terms of cleanliness.
Oh, San Francisco
Kind
is
people.
not far behind.
Yeah. Well,
Muni.
yeah. Oh boy. So it like there is an element to it. And like for a long time, you're gonna be like kind of feeling. I'd say definitely for the first few months, and you're just like, oh, Japanese people would never do this, and oh, this is terrible. But like eventually, like your old self will kind of come back and be like, all right, yeah, you know, this is not Japan, but you know, I'll survive. But yeah.
Erim kept talking to Japanese people in New York.
Oh my God.
But I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, at the restaurants too, I'm like, they're not all Japanese. Like
They were.
it's embarrassing.
I have no
But I
shame.
will say it was really hard, the culture shock, for that aspect. But I also think like talking to your friends, 'cause within that time frame, I feel like, you know, it's really, you know, cliche to say, but you know, you've changed a lot, you've experienced so much. Whereas your friends, they're probably still in your hometown. And then when they ask you about like, oh, how was Jet? You know, they just want to hear 30 seconds of like, oh, it was great, just ate sushi and I taught students. But like, you have so much more to share, whereas they might be like, oh, that sounds fun, and then they don't really care. But I think it was just like all that experience. It was hard to come back to where everything's just the same, you know, and it felt so stagnant for me. But then you get used to it because that's your home country.
Yeah, talking to each other is definitely like a good therapy for you. It is something that will happen to you, the reverse culture shock, but it's not something that's gonna like put you in the ground. So
It felt like it put me in the ground, whatever you did. After 5 years away, I was like, God, you know, as I said earlier, I wasn't used to all like the new technology, and the political climate was very different when I left. So it was like a lot to process in that way. And I would say if you're close to your family or your friends, I would say like making sure you hang out with people and get used to talking to people in your home country and in your home, whatever, your hometown or whatever, and getting used to building up those kind of interpersonal skills, because it's very different in Japan. Just like talking to strangers, someone, you know, at the restaurant or something, I was always like, I still felt like very nervous for some reason. I don't know why, but that was really hard for me to become more confident in that way. And because Americans are definitely more assertive and seems like they're more friendly and have more confidence. So I just was not used to them being so direct and stuff. So practicing, you know, talking, it sounds really lame, but practicing talking to many different strangers as much as possible will build up that confidence. And then so when you get to that job interview, you won't project like a, you know, when you won't have a problem projecting, you know, your own self.
There was I left in July of 2016 in the Obama presidency, and I came back to a Trump presidency. And I felt like in 2 years, just watching the news, I felt like my country was like radical change, and I was like, how am I gonna deal with this? And it's just talking to your family, talking to your friends who weren't with you in Japan, and then keeping people who were with you in Japan close by. I was lucky that I knew Julia and Hannah, and they both just happened to move to New York, and I was like, that's kind of cool.
Julia says I followed her, which is such a lie.
I know, I came here first.
A month before me. She came a month before me. So yeah.
I was 25 years before all of you, so.
Okay, sure. But just having that support system is so crucial, not even for people on JET, but like whenever you're moving for a new job, and it's really hard when you don't know anybody. So having that support system, whether it's your JET friends or whether it's your family or whether it's your college friends or whatever, is so important, especially as you're struggling to like relearn everything in your home country again.
Have we, Alberto, have we answered your question okay?
Sorry, we just went on.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. It's really helpful. Yeah, I'm 4 years in, so yeah, my when you're that far away, it's like how easy will it come? How you say, like, how easy will it be to get back? But what you guys said is really helpful. So
good.
Yeah,
Where are you
really
from?
nice. I'm from San Jose, California originally.
Me too. That's my hometown.
I thought that was cool. But my family moved to LA now. But yeah.
Cool.
Hey, real quick, Alberto, how did you hear about the career forum?
Someone posted it on the JET API, the Asia Pacific Islander page.
Okay.
So I figured someone shared it on there, so that's how I found out about it. Yeah. Good
to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
And are you planning to move back?
To be honest, I'm still figuring that out. So a little bit about me. I did JET from 2015, 2017, and I'm working in Japan now, but I'm kind of at this weird phase. It's like I do want to go back eventually to the States, but I'm not sure when. So I thought it would be helpful to hear your guys' advice just to see how, just get some perspective. Yeah.
You're leaving in July, right?
Or me leaving? Actually, it's up for me to decide when I want to leave, I guess. Yeah, so.
He's finished JET. He's finished JET.
Oh, he's finished JET. Yeah, so.
If you feel like you're, that's the thing. Like, if it's easy for people to get, complacent in one job anywhere.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you're just not gaining more skills, you're not advancing, then I would suggest considering not staying, because at any job, I feel like you need to think about that. If you have an end goal and, you want to fulfill that, then maybe you should start evaluating if you're staying because you're comfortable or you're staying because you're learning new things and growing. And that's always important to think about at any job.
Yeah. I felt like when I was making a decision between my second and third year, did you want to stay for a third year? I was like that close to staying for a third year. And I felt like I was such in the zone of JET that I was like, I don't know if I want to go back to the States now, or maybe I'll do 5 years. So I was like totally in cruise control. But like talking to my family helped, talking to my friends helped. And I'm not sure if this is really applicable to him, but I knew that there was something greater for me to do than being the grad school. So I had to make what I call the first adult decision of my life to do something that was less fun, but the right thing to do for me. And that's what I sided with coming home.
Yeah. I should have left my fourth year. I was like, oh, but it's all right. I met really great people my 5th year, and I really treasure those relationships. So I guess I don't really,
Oh, thank you.
even though I didn't do anything for my career, I've made some amazing friendships and amazing relationships. So that in the end was worthwhile for me.
Yeah, I think I kind of regretted only staying 1 year because it's just so short. But I think I knew that I wasn't going to get much out of it any longer because I wasn't going to learn I was going to be difficult learning Japanese for me. And then just like, I wasn't in education and my field is so much more different that I thought, if, 1 year and then I could just start my career from there because I didn't want to stay too long and just be comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, when I was on JET, there was a 3-year limit. So I had a choice between staying. Huh? Sorry, what was that?
What was that? I don't know.
Okay, anyway, 3-year limit. I had a choice between doing 2 or 3 because 1 was going to be too short no matter what. And Hannah, I went back and forth with our mutual advisor and college professor, Dennis Yasutomo, about whether to stay or go. And I ended up deciding to leave after 2 years, but in my case, 3 would have been okay. I can't fathom 4 or 5. I can only imagine what the adjustment would be like after that length of time. So kudos to all of you who have done long stints and have acclimated and come back and started new adventures. I think this is probably a good place to stop for tonight. I'd like to thank all of our panelists so much. I know it's late for you guys over there on the East Coast, and we really appreciate.
It's Friday.
Yeah, that's true. It's Friday. But we appreciate your participation and hope that maybe if we do another one of these, we can reach out to you and ask you to participate in some way again, because it's really valuable. Clearly, this is a huge value add for people who are able to tune in, and then for those who can't, we have the recording, and hopefully we'll be able to post it for others.